Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Unfiltered Voices, Jewish Women Shaping Hollywood. My name is Lisa Ansell, and I have the privilege of serving as Director of Academic Programming at the USC Casden Institute. On behalf of the USC Casden Institute, the USC School of Cinematic Arts, and our partners at IKAR, thank you for being here today. There's a line that always makes people in this town smile because it holds a real truth. Hollywood is the only place where you can die of encouragement. It captures the mix of optimism and intensity that so many creatives live with every day. Today, we're leaning into the best version of that energy, encouragement that's grounded, candid, and connected to purpose. Unfiltered Voices is a celebration of Jewish women whose work shapes what we see on screen and how stories reach audiences. It's also an invitation to listen more closely to the choices, convictions, and creative risks that shape careers and ultimately culture. Today is about learning the stories behind the stories and about what it takes to lead with integrity in an industry that can be both exhilarating and demanding. When we talk about Jewish women shaping Hollywood, we're not just talking about identity as a label. We're talking about identity as a lens. Jewish tradition teaches us to wrestle with big questions, to insist on nuance, and to hold ourselves accountable to one another. Values like tzedek, the pursuit of justice, emet, the commitment to truth, and tikkun olam, the responsibility to repair what's broken, can become creative instincts, the courage to tell complicated stories, to make room for voices at the margins, and to build sets, writers' rooms, and organizations where people are treated with dignity. A quick note before we begin, so that we can all remain present throughout the program. Please silence your phones and refrain from recording the content, as this event is being professionally recorded and will be available for viewing on the Casden Institute website within a few days. And now it is my honor to welcome our distinguished panelists, each of whom brings a different vantage point on what it means to lead, create, and stay grounded in values while navigating an industry that moves quickly and demands a great deal. We're fortunate to learn from their talent, their leadership, and their candor. We welcome Debra Messing, Emmy-winning actress and activist. Jane Wiseman, Executive Vice President and Head of Originals at Paramount Plus. Natalie Marciano, founder and producer and financier of Poster Child Pictures. Julie Ansell, President of Motion Pictures at Gracie Films. Lauren Stein, Executive Vice President and Head of Creative at SONY Pictures. Wait, we have more. Together, these trailblazing Jewish women represent the many ways influence works in Hollywood, on screen and behind the camera, in boardrooms and on sets, in advocacy and in the quieter daily decisions about what gets made and whose stories are treated as universal. We'll talk today about craft and career, yes, but also about the moral imagination that so often sits underneath the work. How values travel from home and community into creative leadership, and how Jewish women are helping expand what Hollywood looks like, sounds like, and stands for. Before we begin, I also want to again extend sincere thanks to our incredible partners at the USC School of Cinematic Arts, Michael Renov, Professor of Critical Studies and Vice Dean for Academic Affairs at the USC School of Cinematic Arts, and our moderator for today's discussion, Gail Katz, Professor of Cinematic Arts at USC, and to Rabbi Sharon Brous and Melissa Balaban at IKAR for making this conversation possible. We're likewise especially grateful to our panelists for lending their time, their candor, and their wisdom and to all of you for showing up today to listen and engage. Just a brief word about the format for today's event. Our panel discussion will run about an hour to an hour and a half, and then you will have the opportunity to submit questions for the panelists during the last 30 minutes of the program on the cards that were provided for you on your chairs. And I will be gathering these cards towards the end of the program. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce my colleague, Gail Katz, who will guide us through what I know will be an honest, lively, and thoughtful conversation. Gail Katz is a tenured professor at USC School of Cinematic Arts, where she holds the Mary Pickford Endowed Chair. A prolific producer, her films have grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide and earned 9 Academy Award nominations. Her credits include Air Force One, The Perfect Storm, In the Line of Fire, Outbreak, Bicentennial Man, Mighty Joe Young, and Pacific Sacrifice, as well as network television series, and recently the TV movie, The College Admissions Scandal. She holds a degree in economics in political science from UC Berkeley and an MBA from Yale University. Welcome, Gail Katz.
Thank you. Thank you. So before I introduced our distinguished guests, I wanted to share with you a little bit about why I wanted to be here for today's discussion. Well, it's more than a little bit. As you heard, I'm a producer and a professor. But those titles don't tell you the whole picture, as they don't for any of us. I don't put in my bio that I'm a first-generation American, a child of Holocaust survivors, refugees who didn't go to or graduate high school, much less college. My dad was a deli man, not that Katz's Deli, and my mom a housewife who went from Auschwitz to Bergen-Belsen, where Anne Frank died. My mom survived, weighing 90 pounds with typhoid fever. She was rescued by British soldiers on April 15, 1945, 81 years ago. She made it to Boyle Heights and then to Beverly Hills, where I grew up. My parents felt safe in America and that very Jewish community they chose. Being Jewish was the most important thing in our house. If you told my mother the weather, she would ask if the weatherman was Jewish. It was like that. What mattered most was that Jews were safe and they could thrive in America, and education was attainable for their children. After a lot of that education and years as an executive in finance and then production, I became a producer and partnered for about 15 years with a famous German director named Wolfgang Petersen. An odd couple we were. We became great friends and successful collaborators. He grew up in Hamburg, Germany, about an hour's drive from Bergen-Belsen. I know I've made that drive a few times. He was a 4-year-old boy there when my 19-year-old mother was liberated from Bergen-Belsen. They were practically neighbors. I mention this bizarre coincidence to underline that our industry can make strange bedfellows, and we all learn to work in unusual and sometimes unexpected situations. I think Wolfgang and I reminded each other of the past and inspired hope that our partnership could somehow right those horrible wrongs. Along the way, I also faced undeniable sexism. Rooms where I was often the only female endured unfunny humor, and salaries that would often not match my male counterparts. It was the way it was. Nevertheless, the driving force in my career was to succeed, to make movies that were smart, which told bold and compelling stories. Sure, they had to entertain the audience, but they needed to move me and I had to be proud of what the movies were saying. Wolfgang, too. In dramatically different ways, we both carried the burdens of Hitler and World War II. Each of you has your own unique Jewish story. I sense you wouldn't be here today if you didn't. I'd like to think that in addition to our differences, there's something that unites us all. Shared values that guide us in imperceptible ways as we plow through life. And now I'm going to introduce the panelists. On my left, Lauren Stein is as you heard, Executive Vice President and Head of Creative Affairs at SONY Pictures Television, where she oversees development across drama, comedy, and animation, as well as international co-productions and new series. Since joining SONY Pictures Television in 2015, she's played a key role in building the studio's development pipeline and talent roster. Her credits include hit series such as The Boys, The Night Agent, The Good Doctor, and The Wheel of Time. She's also developed major recent projects, including Vince Gilligan's new hit show Pluribus, Apple's upcoming Dark Matter, Prime's upcoming Spider Noir with Nick Cage, God of War, and a prequel to The Boys called Vought, am I saying that right? Vought Rising. On her left is Debra Messing, who you all know. Debra is an Emmy Award-winning actress, producer, and human rights activist, best known for her Emmy and SAG Award-winning role as Grace Adler in Will and Grace. Her television credits include The Mysteries of Laura and Smash, with film roles in Searching, Along Came Polly, and The Wedding Date, and most recently, The Alto Nights opposite Robert De Niro. She's also starred on and off Broadway, and she's received numerous honors, including the Women in Film Lucy Award, the Gracie Allen Award, American Comedy Award, and most importantly, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. An award you could step on. That's amazing. Beyond acting, Messing is a global health advocate and co-founder of the Body Agency Collective, supporting women's health care and equity worldwide. She's also an outspoken supporter of the LGBTQ+ community and one of the world's most important high-profile vocal advocates against anti-Semitism. She's traveled and spoken about the documentary she executive produced called October 8, about the explosion of anti-Semitism since October 7th. Raised in Rhode Island, she holds a BA from Brandeis University and an MFA from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, that other film school, and lives in New York City. On her left is Julie Ansell. She's a producer who began her career at James L. Brooks's Gracie Films, rising from development executive to vice president and later serving as president of Motion Pictures. She also served as president of Barry Mendel Productions at Disney and worked on Rushmore and a little movie called The Sixth Sense. Her producing credits include Writing in Cars with Boys, Spanglish, How Do You Know, The Edge of 17, Icebox, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and recently, Ella McKay. And on her left is Natalie Marciano, a producer and content strategist with experience across development, financing, and global film and television operations. She's the owner of Poster Child Pictures and head of film and television at Truth Lens Media, where she oversees a diverse slate of projects in international markets. Her recent credits include Freud's Last Session, The Cleanup Crew, and the upcoming Fuck Valentine's Day with Marissa Tomei. I'm not sure I said that right, but do I need to repeat that? I'm not sure. She's currently in post-production on Rain, Rain, and with Paul Rudd and Street Smart, and is overseeing How to Build a Truth Engine with George Clooney. Marciano began her career at CAA, Nickelodeon, and Relativity Media, and has contributed to acclaimed series including Dexter, Californication, and The Tudors. She specializes in packaging and commercially driven content and aligning creative vision and strategic financing. And on her left is Jane Wiseman. She is head of originals for Paramount Plus, where she oversees development and production of the platform's original content, including series such as Landman, Mobland, Yellow Jackets, Dexter, and upcoming projects starring Nicole Kidman, Elle Fanning, Jeremy Strong, and Anne Hathaway. Previously, Wiseman was an early member of Netflix's original series team, serving as vice president and head of comedy. During her 7-year tenure, she helped drive the platform's expansion into original programming, working on some such acclaimed series, including the comedy Ozark. No, I'm kidding. Ozark. The other comedy, Narcos. Russian Doll, Master of None, Dead to Me, Never Have I Ever, and BoJack Horseman, while leading large-scale content strategy and production. Please welcome all of these amazing guests. So I'm just going to throw questions out to this group, and whoever it feels inspired to answer or have a conversation, that's kind of how it's going to go. I'm not going to go down the line necessarily. But I do want to start with a question about, given the story I told about your family history. And has any of the experiences, immigration stories or Holocaust post-war experience or community roots, traditions, whatever, shaped the kinds of stories you gravitated towards or feel compelled to tell? Or do you just want to talk about it? Anything?
I'm happy to talk about it. I wish it shaped the stories that I'm able to tell, but I don't think the world we're living in is that amenable to it. I grew up not knowing initially the extent of my mother's side of her family until much, much later. We knew we weren't allowed to ask my grandmother any questions, but as a child, I didn't even understand what the Holocaust meant. And as the years went on, I learned that her 6 sisters, their husbands, their kids, and my grandmother's parents were all killed. And she had 3 brothers, 2 that escaped, and 1 who survived Auschwitz and Treblinka with a bullet in his head. And he only died a few years ago and was the only one really in the family who spoke and worked with the Holocaust Museum, traveled the world for years. And I started really kind of after October 7th, starting to dig into the larger part of our family. And I mean, it's a lot of work on ancestry, but what you start finding records and pictures, and it's incredible. And I'm now at over 80 people from my mom's family who were killed. And I mean, I think, and I grew up conservative, but not, I went to Hebrew school 3 days a week. I was bat mitzvahed, but I wasn't super religious. And after October 7th happened, and I don't think I think in part it was because of what happened, but I think it was in part to people's reactions that I was friends with, that I worked with, that the reactions were so shocking to me that it made me want to start digging more and being more involved, because I think myself, and I'm sure others, were really just so disappointed in the lack of people's reactions, and still that people won't talk about it or don't talk about it. So that's my long-winded way of saying I would love to do more programming about it, but it's just not really a world that people are interested in seeing, outside of the Jewish community, and there's others, but it's not easy content to get made.
I feel like I've tried to find ways to bring Jewish identity into the projects I make as a producer hands-on. And so what I've been doing is, we just wrapped a film and we have a big Star of David and a very big reveal with a character. We have, Jewish centers going on in the background. And so that's kind of how I'm contributing, disseminating, misinformation in real time. We had many people show up with very anti-Semitic things to our sets recently, and just discussing with them and educating them. So that's really all we can do right now. And then, working more together as a community. And I feel like we've long been advocates of all the other communities. And I think it's time that we work together in our community. And I think then there will be a space for us to tell those stories again. And as someone who comes from an Israeli-Moroccan background, I just want to say that there's also opportunity to tell other Jewish stories, because as a Sephardic Jew, and we live in LA, there's many types of Sephardic Jews here. I don't think there's a lot of representation in the media. And I think that's a really interesting place to explore, because what is an African Jew? What are we like? Because we certainly have very different culture than what people recognize on television, and in film. So that's kind of what I'm more interested in telling as I go on.
Anybody else? Moving on from that, can you share a moment when your Jewish identity felt like an asset in your career, like a special connection or something it helped you see, say, or advocate for that you might otherwise have missed?
I can speak to that. I, as you all know, work at Paramount Plus and started 8 months ago. And the 3 weeks into my job there, I got a call from David Ellison and saying there is a 4-part limited drama series called Red Alert by Lawrence Bender, and it depicts October 7th, and it's very powerful. And the fact that we mobilized really quickly to get it on to acquire it and get it on the service, and I felt like personally, I didn't know David Ellison, but I felt like I could reach out and say, as a Jewish woman working at this company, I'm very proud and very out and very excited to be representing, because it was a really important moment. So I would say that was a time where I thought it was an asset.
I had a different kind of story, but on Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, everyone kind of thinks of that book as, about puberty and all of that. But if you read it again, it's really about spirituality and finding God. And, in her life, she's trying to figure out, her dad's Jewish, her mom is not, and kind of figuring out her way in the world, which is similar to my background a little bit. And it just that part of the story, I think, was really important and not necessarily known. We definitely focused on that a lot. And, her journey and her finding God in her own way, it was very important.
Well, my origin story first. My parents were Orthodox from Brooklyn. I grew up in Rhode Island. I was one of 3 Jewish children in the entire school system. We had swastikas painted on our cars. I was called a kike in 2nd grade. There was nonstop damage to our mailbox, so I knew at a very young age that I was an other. People hated me, and my parents talked to me very, very young about the Holocaust. And my parents were very proud Jews. My father was president of the Temple and vice president of the Jewish Federation, and my mother was the president of Jewish Federation. And every single night, the two of them were on the phone trying to raise funds for global Jewry. And so in my house, it was very proud and loud, but it was kept secret. I felt like I was in danger unless I kept my identity secret. And I didn't realize until I went to Brandeis University and I walked on campus and people knew what Shabbat was. I realized in that moment I had never felt safe in my life until that moment when I stepped on. So that's the background. Came to Hollywood, my very first movie, the director said my nose was ruining his movie and how quickly could a plastic surgeon come in to fix it. Age 25. So called New York. I don't think I'm appropriate for Hollywood. And then my first TV show, had to straighten my hair. They wanted me to look like Jennifer Aniston. Who didn't want to look like Jennifer Aniston? But then Will and Grace came, and that was an opportunity that I saw to really put out a character who was openly and brazenly and proudly Jewish. And that was something that was discussed. And, you know, much like Will and Grace, how it changed minds and hearts about the LGBTQ community, I was hopeful that we could do the same thing with Jews. And so, you know, Grace went to Camp Ramon. She was bat mitzvahed, and you know, and I'm very proud that she was so forthright in her Jewishness, and that was the first time that I felt like I had the power to do that, to contribute in that way.
Amazing. Have any of you, felt pressure to be less visibly or openly Jewish to fit into the industry? I guess other than that story, because that's pretty clear that that was an attempt to try to make that happen. Whether it's your name, your appearance, your jewelry.
I have a story, or a common thread is, I get the, you don't look Jewish. I can't tell you how many times it, and I don't know how to take that. You know, I mean,
Well,
it's not a compliment.
It's not a compliment.
That's terrible.
It's a trope.
So that is a common thing. And again, my maiden name was Greenstein. I mean, and now I'm a Wiseman. But it is shocking that it's thought of as a compliment, you know, and it's upsetting if you think about it, that it should be taken as a compliment, because I'm proud that I'm Jewish, and the fact that, funny, you don't look Jewish, it's a weird common thread that I get, and it feels like a microaggression.
Yeah, not so micro. I get it.
Yeah, and I think that even though we've been having an uptick in anti-Semitism since October 7th, this has always sort of been pervasive in my experience, just like in Debra's. And I think, you know, I have a last name that sounds very Italian. We obviously know it's a Moroccan Jewish last name, but there are times I just let people think I'm Italian in order to be easier or more palatable, or, you know, whatever it is they you know, project onto me. And I think that's an unfortunate place that most Jewish people, I think, have all been sort of codifying and been, taking the jokes the way that we can and moving on. So definitely.
I think the thing that was the hardest thing for me to accept after October 7th, I was immediately outspoken, and no regrets about that at all. But thank you. A year ago, I was invited to the Tel Aviv LGBTQ Film Festival, and I was being honored, and it was about Will and Grace. And I was thrilled. And I went and I had the most glorious trip throughout Israel. And when I came back, I was told, do not post any of your pictures from Israel.
By your agents,
By-
managers,
By crisis
publicists?
managers from, and it's funny because I went to Israel 6 weeks after October 7th to bear witness. And I did a whole carousel in order to dispel the idea, all of the denialism. But I thought the fact that it was the LGBTQ community, which is so vibrant in Israel, that it was about celebrating Will and Grace, that the Will and Grace fans from that community would celebrate. And it was stunning to me that the hate for Israel/Jews who support the defense of the country, the hate was more important than the support and expansion and celebration of the LGBTQ community.
So I'm obviously Jewish. It's all over. You got nothing going on compared to me. My name, it's never been a question, and it's always just up front there, and I guess I've always just owned it because there's no getting around it. But just wondering if any of you has made a deliberate choice to be more publicly Jewish at some point, maybe since October 7th or whenever, and what prompted that shift?
I think I went the opposite way in terms of being public about it. I took my mezuzah down. I live in an apartment building, and there's only 4 units on my floor, and 3 of us are Jewish. But having things delivered all the time, I live alone, I just felt safer. I feel like I contribute from a far ways, whether it's monetarily or if there's things that I can volunteer for that aren't so out in the open. I think the reactions that people had, good people and not so good people, I think have caused me to be more scared about it. And just a quick anecdote, which happened on, I think, October 10th. I had a physical therapist that came to my office 3 days a week. Lovely, lovely woman. And she always talked during it. And that day she came, and I was not in a good mood and just was quiet. And she asked what was wrong. And I said, well, what happened? And she said, what do you mean what happened? And I said, on October 7th. And she's like, I can't watch that. It's too depressing. And I said, well, that's the reason to watch it. I think so many people didn't want to watch or read what happened with the Holocaust, and that's how we end up where we are today. And we had the rest of our session, and she used to text me every night to see how I was feeling from that day. And at the end of our session, she said, you know, I think we can take a break for a couple months.
Whoa.
And I was like, okay, maybe she thinks I'm getting better. And I never heard from her again. And it took me a couple weeks, and I was like, and she has a lot of very high profile Jewish clients. And I wasn't going to start asking around if she left them too. But it took me a couple weeks to realize, oh, that was because I was Jewish. Like if I hadn't brought up October 7th, I think I would still be seeing her. And it was such a shock to me. Because I grew up in a very Jewish area in Maryland. And so we didn't, other than learning about my family, anti-Semitism was not really a thing. And I think for me, October 7th has put me a little bit back inside of a closet. And my last name kind of gives it away. But
It could also.
and my mom's last name was Greenbaum, so that doesn't help
That
either.
really gives it away.
So yeah, I think it's kind of had, sadly, the opposite effect on me.
Wow, shocking. Anybody else?
I definitely went the opposite direction, and I think it's interesting. We also had opposite upbringings. I think I spent most of my life in the closet, and trying to just never have any discussions about Jews or Jewish anything. And when that happened, and I saw what happened October 8th and all of the celebration around the world, besides being traumatized and disgusted, I also felt enervated. And I just kept hearing my parents say, if not now, when? That was what they said all the time when I was growing up. And I was like, if not now, when? I mean, literally, we have to step up and we have to speak out and we have to defend the truth more than anything. And so I was able to be a part of a documentary called October Hate. And that helped me in that moment of feeling desperately inept and paralyzed, to be like, all right, this is something I can do. I can put out a documentary that just lays out the truth. It's not going to litigate the war in any way. It's just going to lay out facts, period. And I was really proud to be a part of it.
I'm just going to clap. That's very admirable, I think. Switching subjects a bit, although I'm sure we will get back to that, and there's a lot that comes up from talking about these last couple of years. But how has the representation of Jews on screen evolved during your career? And what do you feel about the accuracy of that? Just curious if any of you think about that when you see Jewish characters.
I definitely think about that. As I mentioned before about the diverse types of Jews, I think, Debra was part of sort of the golden age of being Jewish where, growing up, it was kind of like not cool to be Jewish. And then Will and Grace and Seinfeld and all these great shows made us sort of like cool. And it was, very prideful to do that. But still there was that sort of, it felt almost a little bit more realistic than it does now. You have new shows, and I don't want to call them out, where they have these very tropey female characters that are very difficult and very awful and very strong. And it does kind of upset me because I think there's such a, plethora of beautiful female Jewish characters, and I think now people are more afraid to even put those characters in unless you have the one Jewish show. So I definitely see it as kind of going backwards a little bit and a little bit more cartoony, if I were to comment on it.
Anybody else thoughts on that?
It's an interesting dilemma, I think, because again, I'm referring to Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret. We ended up casting Kathy Bates, who is not Jewish. And we had a lot of discussion because, my boss, Jim Brooks, is a big Jew and very proud. And so we talked about it a lot, but she was right for the part. I mean, she was kind of the only person we had in our brain, really, and that Kelly, the director, had written for her. So it was a difficult thing. We ended up doing Josh Safdie, who is Jewish, for the father, and that was a very conscious choice to make. But it's a difficult thing. I think it's difficult when you're dealing with any kind of casting in a way, in the sense that you want to, be true, to those characters. You also want to, really get the best person to play that part. So I think it's can be a give and take, and also something I hope people are conscious about and talk about as they're casting things and thinking about that.
I think that, sorry, 700 things happening in my head right now. I think, like you said, the Seinfeld years, we were likable Jews. We were funny Jews. We were non-threatening Jews. And, going back to Milton Berle, it's like Jews are funny and, they're going to make us laugh. But what I think is missing, especially in film, are films about happy Jewish life. It's about dead Jews, let's be honest, in film. And those stories are incredibly important. But what I want to see and what I'd like to be a part of help creating are just stories about happy Jewish families who sing at weird times and dance and have Shabbat and bicker and, all the things. And I don't see that happening.
Watch Long Story Short.
Is that a film or a TV
No,
show?
it's an animated TV show by the guys
It's
who
from
made
the creator of BoJack Horseman.
It's brilliant, and we'll talk about it later. But anyway, I digress.
But I do want to say that the movie I just did with Robert De Niro, it was a true mob story that took place in the 50s in New York. And the mob boss was Robert De Niro, and his wife was Jewish. And she was the only mob boss's wife who was Jewish in the history of the mob. And when I did the reading, and I was so excited because I thought, this is like a real part. And it's who she is, and it's important, and it's not mocked, and etc. And I really wanted it. And I was like, I want this. I want to play a Jewish role. And then they said that the role was out to Michelle Pfeiffer. I had the same response.
Sorry.
And I was like, okay, let's wait and see what she says. And ultimately she passed, and I went in and I did the reading with Bob and Barry Levinson and got the part. And I was very grateful. I was grateful that they actually cast a Jew in a Jewish role. And I think now we're getting into very difficult waters when it comes to casting and expectations of, proper representation, and I think that Kathy Bates is perfect, and she doesn't have to be Jewish, but then there's Odessa,
Yeah.
what's
From Marty Supreme.
yeah, and she was going to play the lead as a half Jewish, half Mexican character. And everyone was up in arms saying, "You're not Mexican." And the fact that she was half Jewish and the character was half Jewish didn't count. It didn't count.
Wow.
So she stepped back.
Well, this was my next question, but you put it right out there. I was going to ask, how do you feel about the casting of Jewish characters in film, TV, and theater? Does it matter to you, I guess, if the actor is Jewish? Because it seems to matter to every other group, ethnicity, whatever. I mean, recent examples, the Fabelmans. I mean, Stephen cast Michelle Williams as his mother. To Marty Supreme, which went the other direction, Timothy Chalamet, Gwyneth Paltrow, Odessa, and most of the others. So does it matter? It maybe didn't in the Kathy Bates, but I do wonder, because I notice it, I really notice it. And I wonder.
So I think that it's a little bit of a double standard that we have to be supportive of other ethnicities and then we are not also represented. People seem to forget we are 0.02% of the world's population. So we are the smallest minority. And just because there happens to be a lot of Jews in Hollywood doesn't mean that we should be overlooked for those roles. And, even in the writing, when you see Jewish people, maybe that don't look like Jane, but there's many that do, right? And there was one scene from a movie that was a happy Jewish movie where, the blonde girls come into this bat mitzvah and all the Jews look like slugs, like we're all dark-haired, just atrocious-looking women, and these beautiful blondes walk in. And I don't know about you, but I know many beautiful blonde Jewish women. And so I think it's all of that. Like, let's not double standard it. Why shouldn't Odessa be able to play that role if Bradley Cooper is playing, a prolific Jewish character? I'm not really understanding.
Ben Kingsley is always
Correct.
Jewish,
Correct.
according to film.
I think what we've seen over the last half century is we have gone from being, in the Holocaust, not white, and now we are white privileged people, and so we are not considered marginalized communities, and I think that steers a lot of the decision making.
Well, and I think part of that is you'd never get a pushback. I mean, there wasn't one person who said, "Oh, Kathy Bates is not Jewish." That never came up ever. So, I mean, it just feels like if that's in other ethnicities, they make a point and they protest and they change things sometimes, and that's not happening.
But I think that just shows the testament of Jews is we're so open. We're always available to do the right thing, whatever works best. And I think sometimes we're not given the same consideration back, right? That we're doing the best that we can as well. So I agree. Kathy Bates was amazing in it, but it should go both ways.
The Academy has infinity groups, and what that means, they have groups where actors can come together and have mini communities so that there can be, partnerships, creative partnerships to tell stories specifically about your minority group. And it's wonderful. There are so many different, and there is not one for Jews.
Wow.
And what's that? I was saying, we were told no a year ago.
She said, just started a few months ago.
At the Academy? Thank you so much. Yes.
Also, what took
2
so
years
long?
ago, we went and we tried to do it, and they said, no, you can't have an affinity group.
Wow.
God bless.
Okay,
Baruch
great.
Hashem.
And the
Thank
unions
you.
as well.
Well, that segues nicely to my next question about the Academy Museum. That when it, you know where I'm going. Everybody knows where I'm going with this. But when it opened in 2021, there was curiously no mention of the immigrant Jewish founders of Hollywood. And now there is a room called Hollywoodland, literally called that, dedicated to the Jewish founders, with a documentary detailing the history. There were protests. It took a few times to get this right. Believe me, there were missteps even along correcting the original mistake. So my question is, was this something on your radar then, and how did you feel about it, and how do you feel about it now? By the way, the documentary is quite good, but
Yeah, I took my kids there when it first opened and was like, what is happening here? This is complete erasure. It actually reminds me, as we're all women sitting up here, how sometimes our credits and accomplishments are taken from us, and so too were the Jewish people's contributions to film. And it wasn't a matter of opinion. This was factual, evidence that we contributed to our community. And so it was really upsetting to see, again, numerous times over the last few years, factual contributions that we've made, or just factual evidence that's been twisted and erased.
yeah. So I think we all agree on that. So there's an interesting phenomenon that many successful Israeli TV shows have been remade for the U.S. market, such as In Treatment, Homeland, and Euphoria. Any thoughts on why Israeli shows cross over so well? And do you think that's going to be harder now or change?
I mean, what those shows have in common, except Euphoria scares me to say this, is that they are about universal experiences. I mean, don't tell my kids that about Euphoria, but universal truths. And I love that we get so much content from Israeli producers because they do it better than anybody. And the fact that those shows can have that, I don't see it. Actually, I think we would lean more into it. For me, it's about where the best story comes from, and the fact that so many Israeli productions can format into English language or global shows. I think it's just a testament to them. But we're always looking at Israeli formats and Israeli series, and it's exciting. I don't think that's going to change. It shouldn't change.
I don't think so either. I mean, I think one of the other things they all have in common are incredible characters. And, you could take the characters from any of those shows, the examples you used, and obviously they worked here because they're universal type characters. I think certain shows, like one of my favorites is Shtisel, which
Oh, yeah.
I mean, is truly one of you could never make that here. I think you could maybe make it with about a crazy family in another religion, or another ethnicity. So I don't think everything travels, but what is interesting is you find a lot of the Israeli programming as acquisitions on platforms that they don't advertise. It just, the algorithm starts to know you. So I am marketed every single Israeli show or documentary. And it's amazing how many there are out there, and that they're not going away. And if people were to, it's more word of mouth, I think, that people find a lot of these shows. And our company has a deal with the company Keshet, and so they have some of the best. It's like any format or script they bring to us is just incredible, and we're now trying to figure out what is the best way of getting those made, and is it making them here, or is it making them in Israel first and then bringing them back here? So we kind of try to circumvent a lot of, the obstacles.
Interesting. I have a couple questions, or no, just one here really, about women in Hollywood. You're all pretty successful, but, women in Hollywood are still facing systemic inequality behind the camera, in the C-suite, in leading roles on screen, as well as a persistent gender pay gap. I just, maybe relay a few examples of how your gender's impacted your career journey, and thoughts about where we're headed on this. It's still, the directing issue is still, the numbers they move ever so slightly, but then they backslide a little.
I'd love to just start with independent film. So as someone who works on the finance side of independent film, there are very few women who are deciding what's getting made. So I encourage women constantly to learn about film finance. It's no more difficult than real estate. And whether you're an actor or you're a director or you're a producer, I think it's really important to know how the sausage is made, because it's really just about relationships. And I think women are better at cultivating relationships. So we actually would have a lot more power in who's getting hired, the kind of stories that are being told, and how we show up in the entertainment industry. Like on the finance side, there is a very, very small pool of people, 99% of which are men. So it needs to shift, because it would start there, I think. Let's just get more women who are deciding where the money's going.
Well, I also, in addition to that, it's getting more women in the creative side. That's obviously, something. I worked with a woman writer-director a couple times, and it really is a different experience. It's a different set. It's more supportive in a way. She's very tough, like you have to be. That doesn't change whether you're a man or a woman. But there's just a different feeling of people talking to each other and being willing to discuss things, and a little less ego, maybe. And I think for me as a woman, being a producer, I think part of why I've been successful is my kind of more wanting to support others, for lack of a better word. Wanting to make people do their best work, as opposed to pushing my ideas all the time on everybody, and just trying to get people to be together. And I think that sort of female energy has that. So it's just trying to push those women out there and tell their stories and let them create, basically.
Yeah, I love that. When I spent my time at Netflix, my North Star was Cindy Holland, who was the architect of the original series initiative, and now I have the joy of reuniting with her again. If you guys don't know who she is, Google. She's amazing. But one thing that we looked at when we first started, I'm talking from a content point of view, is that when you look at the offering that we have on our service, it's, you were saying, it's mob land, landman, a lot of lands. And thank you. And what we have is very male, we have UFC and football. And the first thing that Cindy and I set out to do was to make female forward programming. So this is a gender thing. And so we talk about very openly. And it's not just women on screen, it's behind. And so that is something that we have set out to do. And it's about, like you said, surrounding yourself with strong women and then really getting out there and being able to represent women to the audiences, because we think they will come to the service if that's the kind of content that you give them.
Yeah, and I think it's actually us women that are tasked with this because, primarily we're kind of pitted against each other as competition in our industry. And I think it really comes down to us hiring other women, working with more women, and just creating more opportunities for each other because no one else is going to give it to us. Similar to the Jewish question, if we don't make it, who else will?
Yeah, it's still considered shocking when there's a female cinematographer, director, certainly very unusual, showrunner in some cases, but rare still. And yet I just was talking to a friend who's a male who is a showrunner and said that all the executives that he deals with now are women. And that's might be true sort of in the mid-level. I mean, they're not really heads of the company or corporate heads, but it is starting, I believe, to just, we're getting to the middle. So that's progress, I guess. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that it seems like there's a little there, and it's just, but you think about the movies or TV shows that are, female content, I guess you would say, or the lead is, like Barbie, or I mentioned K-pop Demon. I mean, some of the number one shows or movies are female-led. And it turns out that men watch them too.
Absolutely. Again, we just launched a show called The Madison with Michelle Pfeiffer, your friend, our friend. And it showed, again, the strategy that we're trying to portray is more women in front of the camera and behind. The director, Christina Voros, did a great job. But if you build it, they will come. And the show is bringing in more women than any show we've ever launched. So we hear you, and we're doing it.
Okay, great. So, yeah. Just wondering, who were some of your early role models, whether they were Jewish or female or otherwise? And what did they teach you about, how did they teach you to become the badass women you are? Or was that just innate? I mean, I'm just going to say this isn't someone I knew, but my Zoom avatar is Barbra Streisand.
I was going to say Barbara. Barbara's mine.
She is, okay, well, speak to that, because she's
everything. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Barbara's everything.
Gentle. Oh, my
Agreed.
God, everything.
Everything. I mean, I grew up next to a farm. There were no Jews anywhere. And my mother would play Funny Girl on loop. I would sing I'm the Greatest Star nonstop. That was my song that I would, karaoke song. I would sing that. No, but I think Barbra Streisand for me was the touchstone. When I watched the movie, I thought, oh, maybe there is a place for me. She's not beautiful in the conventional Hollywood way, and yet she's talented, and that cannot be denied. And she won't let that be denied. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be Barbra Streisand. And, she talked about, not getting a nose job when everyone was pressuring her to. And she was like, this nose has done pretty well for me, And the other person who had a big impact on me was Dirty Dancing.
Well,
Jennifer Grey.
She was my doppelganger.
Really?
Until
yes,
she changed.
She changed. But I remember being in school and watching and being like, oh, I'm Jewish and I'm klutzy and I'm awkward and, I'm socially inadequate. And she was the star. She was the star of the movie. And I thought, oh, okay, all right, there's a place for me. I can be a part of that world.
So I similarly loved Barbara Streisand, but I have to call you out because when I saw Will and Grace, I was like, that's me. I'm Grace. She is competitive and aggressive and loud and funny and quirky. And I just really related to that and was very much inspired by that show and by you. So I'm just going to call you out. You were one of my role models.
Just wondering if there are any Jewish themed, well, other than Stitzel, the shows, film, television, even theater that have stuck with you. I mean, obviously there's the way past, the Fiddlers, Yentl, Schindler, all of those. But recent works.
Fauda.
To
me, I just think that's an extraordinary series.
Did you all see A Real Pain?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, really good. The Lehman trilogy. No Jews involved except the original writer. 3 actors, all of it, director, everyone. I mentioned Long Story Short. Nobody Wants This. I think that was mentioned in different way. I love it, sorry. But just wondering if there are others that have stuck with you that, I think Yentl is particularly meaningful, or at least was to me growing up.
For sure. I think I've always gravitated to the comedy of things. So back to the Seinfelds, the Will and Graces. There was a movie with Ben Stiller called Keeping the Faith that I love. It's just one of those movies that makes me proud.
I was up for that part, but I was too Jewish.
Oh, no. Great film.
I'm not lying. But it was proper casting. So
what would you want the next generation of graduates entering entertainment to know about building a career without compromising their identity or their values or their safety?
I think what's interesting about at least the TV business is I would say there's a longer way to go being a woman meaning we have further to go being a woman than being Jewish. I don't think I've ever been discriminated against for being Jewish.
Except by your trainer or whoever that was.
Yes, except for her. But when it comes to jobs and when it comes to work, the negative experiences I have had have been related to being a woman. And so I think, what I always say to young people who want to get into the business, regardless of religion or race or sex, is learn everything you possibly can, read everything you can about both sides of a situation. Since October 7th, I have found myself watching as many counterpoint documentaries just to try to understand. And you still don't, but I think if you're educated on these things, I think you're able to then talk about things, you're able to tell different kinds of stories, but there are so many groups out there. There are so many, there's a huge hole for female directors, a massive, massive hole. And that's encouraging more people to go to AFI, to join whatever volunteering they can do, because we're constantly looking for female directors, and they're not available. Everybody is taken. And so there is a market there. And so I think young people coming in, find what that niche is that you want to do. Again, regardless of your faith or your sex, and go at it. Anybody that will take you for free, for whatever, anything you can learn from somebody, just do it.
I think it's really important to find your community. One of the hardest things about being on this side of the camera is that you are put in a position where you have to be given permission to create. You have to wait to be given the opportunity. And what we're seeing now is that in an incredible way, people are creating and saying, I don't need you. And they're doing it on TikTok, and they're doing it on YouTube, and they're doing, and I think that is going to be your leverage eventually. And if you find your community, you will be able to partner with each other. You will have a group that's trustworthy, and you will be able to support each other through the really, really hard times, because there will be. And put 10% of every check into a savings account.
That's a good one. Fun fact, Lauren Stein and I have known each other for 27 years. We were assistants together at Warner Brothers.
She's one of my first friends, but that is currently
say
still in my
oldest
life. My longest friend. Yeah, that I'm still
And
friends
we
with.
found a community of women, many of them are Jewish, but that really, I like that point about the community, because we hold ourselves up to each other, and we trust each other, and we rely on, for so many things that's gone on in my career. Lauren and my other friends in the business definitely have been there, and I would really recommend that you find that community right in the beginning.
I agree with that, and want to add, I think what's taken me a long time to realize is showing up authentically as yourself and pushing back when you in a kind way, but not being afraid to take up space in the room as a woman. And I think sometimes it takes us a really long time to get there, and to our detriment. And like I said, please get involved on the finance side so you can make the decisions, and the men aren't running Hollywood. So.
And I would also say, that voice inside your head, you have to really trust it, because your instincts, your boundaries are going to keep moving based on what's happening in your life. And people in this industry are going to be forceful and ask things of you that you do not want to do, or you don't want to support, or you feel uncomfortable and you don't know why you feel uncomfortable. And I would say, listen to it, because no one is going to be looking out for you but you. No one is going to care about your mental health but you. And you are artists, and you are creators, and you have a voice that serves you so well. Don't ignore it.
So the last prepared question I have is that if you could change one industry norm to better align entertainment with your values around casting or writers' rooms or leadership or philanthropy, or you've alluded to the stories that get funded, what would it be and why?
Do we have a few hours?
I guess the whole thing has been about this. Is this a tough one? Yeah.
I think another thing that was very surprising to me after October 7th was all the charities that did and didn't participate or advocate, and charities that I had supported over meant, I'm sure all of us have, and the silence was deafening, and it's unfortunate in many ways, but it made me turn from some of those charities that I will no longer support, which is unfortunate in itself. So I think if it's equality just across the board, and in so many small things that you're not even aware that it's affecting. Like if we could all just be kind to each other, and that then trickles down to, every aspect of the jobs that we do.
Mine is unreasonable, but I'll still say it. I want to get back to more purity around art. I want it to be the story is king, talent is king, and not these committees that are part of some vertical integration at GE saying, no, we can't make that. We have to make another superhero movie. It's like I came up in the 70s. The 70s films was what made me fall in love with Hollywood. And there was such it was palpable, physically palpable, the creative energy that was happening at the time. And I think that unfortunately, with consolidation and bottom lines, I think that art has been sacrificed and has been diluted in a way that just doesn't serve anybody.
I definitely second that. I would love to get rid of the words content. And, it's not content. It's not a product. I know we're all in a business and you have to think about that kind of thing, but it's art. I mean, it could be fun art, it can be serious art, but it's art. And it just dehumanizes it. And I think it makes it harder for people on the creative side to make something when you're meeting with people who say content. You're making, what's your IP, and it just really. I wish we could just eliminate those words entirely.
I agree, and I just want to be a little controversial since we're saying what we feel, and I think a part of the problem, anyways, that I've experienced as someone who's a little bit older, and certainly Gen X, I feel, has been sort of cut out of a lot of decision making. I think bringing back some standards of, before you're a VP of, creation or whatever it is, that you've maybe had some life experience and maybe that you love movies and television, because I cannot tell you how many Zoom calls I'm on with very young people who really just don't care about what they're making and have these great jobs. And I think they've overlooked the people that have grown up with this stuff that really love it, that could make better decisions. So let's earn our way.
So I have a few questions from the audience, or comments and questions. Thank you. This one from Tabby, I think. We're coming into May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. Please share something each of you does to bring you peace, including if there are any practices rooted in Judaism that bring you peace.
I've taken up knitting, and it has been a complete game changer.
That's very Jewish.
No, I am telling you, doom scrolling, it has gotten really pathological. And so now every time I reach for the phone, I say, nope, you have to knit a scarf. And it's very relaxing, and it brings me peace. And I highly recommend it.
Anybody else? You no longer have your trainer, or it wasn't your trainer, it was your
my
physical
therapist.
therapist. But maybe you don't need her anymore.
No, I have, this is going to sound the most bizarre thing, but I've started making coloring books.
Like creating them?
Yes, because it takes my mind off of my anxiety. It's still creative, but it makes me think about other things, and I have found it endlessly amusing. And now I give them to people.
Wow.
Yeah,
More creative.
but a different kind, because I am not artistic. I can't even trace my own hand, and the internet helps you a lot.
Mine's a little more interactive. I like a karaoke night. That will de-stress me more than anything else. Just go out, have fun, sing some songs.
I like the concept of an old-fashioned walk where you don't have your phone and you just let your thoughts go as they will and just let it be.
I have to go with family. I try so hard. We're all very busy. I have teenagers, but we try at least 3 or 4 times a week to sit down and have family dinner during the week. And again, it could be like eating cereal, but because I don't cook. But I'm kidding. But we do, we get it together that we're sitting down and we do our thorn, stem, and buds. So that brings me peace.
Wow, I play golf. And I know that sounds like really not fun to those of you who don't play, but I find it very meditative. I also Zoom a lot with my 2 little grandchildren in New York, and that helps a lot. So here's another note from the audience. I was at a funeral on October 7th when I learned about the attack, where and when I lost a friend. I know time has passed, but it still feels like October 8. How do you all keep hope and creativity alive? What rituals and routines sustain you as Jewish women creatives? This is from a producer. Similar questions.
As someone who has a lot of Israeli family in Israel, I think what has helped me out is just how strong the Israelis are. And so really borrowing strength that's not mine. My mom is Israeli and, is kind of someone who knows, who's been through all of this and just kind of stealing a little bit from the Israelis around me and, trying to keep hope alive because they certainly do a better job than we do. So
The Jewish college activists who have come out of October 7th have brought me so much peace and hope and excitement. They are badass leaders, and they are the ones that are on the front line and are not scared. And I think that we are in incredible hands with that generation. And I light Shabbat candles every week now, and I didn't prior to October 7th.
Wow. So grateful, and this is another comment from the audience, so grateful and inspired by each one of you. If you have a sense of it, why did you want to do this today? What led you to agree to be on this panel?
Jane asked me, but I didn't even think twice about it. I talk a lot, so doing things like this isn't difficult for me. But it's also, I feel like an outlet because we don't talk enough about these issues. I find even in the office, and I work with a lot of Jewish people, we whisper still about things related to October 7th. I mean, I had a writer recently that I was on the phone with say to me, we shouldn't say this on the phone. And I'm like, oh my God, the fact that even it is uttered. But again, it just wasn't a question for me because I think as everybody has been talking about community, I think any chance to be with other people who have the same beliefs, I would do in a heartbeat.
Here's another comment, question. How can we bridge the gap? There is so clearly some sort of communication missing between the Jewish community and non-Jewish community. Just let me finish. How can we alleviate this without the Jewish community close in? I'm not sure I got that right. Well, it's between the Jewish community for one also, and then the Jews and non-Jews, I believe.
So I think it's with the things that we make. I am going to use Will and Grace as another example. That show did more for the LGBTQ plus community than I think anything serious or heavy ever did. And I think we just need to be cool Jews again and make us accessible, make us funny, and teach the facts in a way that make people want to hear it. I think, shoving things down people's throats is not the way. We got to do it the way we're good at. Let's make people laugh.
This is for you, Debra. What's been the most difficult thing about being so proudly pro-Israel on your social media platforms, and the most rewarding?
The most difficult has been the abandonment of most of the Hollywood community who, prior to October 7th, I thought I was part of a family, a part of a community, because we had marched together, we had advocated for every marginalized community together, and there was this feeling of, we stand for equality and for kindness, and to have everyone disappear was devastating. And I think the first year I was in deep mourning, because I just felt like, so all these people who I thought were my friends, they're not. So do I have any friends at all who are not Jewish? It was really, 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 really painful to feel abandoned, and the deafening silence. And I reached out, and I tried to bridge the divide, and I got crickets back. Nobody wanted to even talk to me. So that was the hardest, and remains the hardest. It's just a reality now. And the most wonderful is absolutely all the beautiful Jewish people who stop me on the street or stop me in the bathroom or whatever, and they say,
Especially there.
yeah, the bathroom is the best. Just thank you for speaking out. Thank you for doing that. I've had people say that they fell into depressions and they felt alone, and they were able to follow my feed and feel like there was an understanding. And those people cannot underestimate how meaningful those comments are to me.
That does it. I'm changing my Zoom to Debra Messing. And Barbara has plenty of people doing that. And that wraps this up, guys. I want to thank our wonderful panelists. Thank you all for coming. And there's refreshments outside, if you don't mind wind.